Hi, it's Joy Foster, founder of TechPixies and the host of the Sparkle and Thrive podcast. And I'm flying solo this week. I like to fly solo occasionally. I love interviewing guests. We have some amazing interviews that we do here on the Sparkle and Thrive podcast. But I thought it was time for a fly solo. And I thought it would be important to just talk a little bit about the TechPixies journey. We have been through the ups and the downs and the ins and the outs. And what I can tell you is we are thriving now. We have got to a place where we're no longer surviving, we're moving forwards. And I've got a really solid plan for certainly the next year, and the next couple of years are looking really amazing. And none of this would be possible without one tool, which I leaned into in 2019. And that was learning how to build an online course. Now, TechPixies was originally a face-to-face program. It was originally just in Oxford. And once we had done several cohorts of face-to-face learning in Oxford, I got the feeling that we would either saturate the Oxford market, like it's not a very huge market or not a very big market, or we would struggle to really make the impact we wanted to make, right? So even if we made a good impact in Oxford, that was only going to be an impact in Oxford. And so I wanted to take the program online. Now, as part of that process, I applied for funding. I didn't know I could build an online course and an online business without funding because I didn't know anyone who was doing it. And so I went through the path of raising money and launching my business, raising money. Now, the irony is when I raised money, I completely failed. I mean, I think if the signs of success are the number of failures you have, I'm well on my way to success because what I tried to do was I tried to take the funding I had and I poured that into people, thinking that if we hired more people, we would grow faster. And that's not what happened. Partly, I also didn't know how to launch an online course. So the very first version of our online course, which I built with the investment funding we had, was terrible. They were 45-minute lessons. And, it was like people bought it for a small amount of money, but then they never got through it because it was so painful. So I did it all wrong. Like I did everything wrong. And the initial amount of money that I had raised to build my business pretty much was gone within 6 months probably within 6 months, because I remember I had to go back to my investors, 6 to 8 months. I had to go back to my investors and I had to ask them for more money at Christmas time because I wasn't going to be able to make it through Christmas if they didn't give me more money. And that was really embarrassing. And it was really not a great start to the investor relationship because I really didn't know what I was doing. I had a belief in what we could build. I had a belief in what we could do. And I could see what it could become, but I didn't have a system. I didn't have a process for doing that. What was interesting is that little bit of extra investment that I got sort of got me through Christmas. This is going way back to 2018. Got me through Christmas. And I found an online mentor, Amy Porterfield, who had a system and a process that she'd outlined exactly how to launch a digital course. And when I did her free training, she now has a boot camp on how to do digital courses, but she also has free training. But when I did her free training, I realized I was doing it all wrong. I was doing everything wrong. And I really needed guidance and support with a system that worked. So I took the last amount of money, and this is no joke. I took the last amount of money that was in my bank account. And this is in January of 2019. And I invested in Digital Course Academy. Now, I was one of the very first students to do Digital Course Academy. And it really was the last amount of money that I had available to me. At that point, I felt like I had enough confidence in Amy and her skills to deliver that that last investment, that money that I had, if I put it into her, that it would return to me fourfold at least, because she had so many testimonials about students who had done really, really well. So if you don't know who Amy Porterfield is, she is not much older than me, I don't think. She's in her 40s, and she's American. She's out of California. She now lives in Tennessee. We used to work for Tony Robbins, and she was the digital content manager for Tony Robbins. And interestingly enough, if you've been following our podcast, before we started talking about DCA, these last few episodes, Digital Course Academy, which is what Amy Porterfield runs, I spent 2 episodes talking about Product Launch Formula and Jeff Walker. Now, there's a connection here. And this is a little backstory that not a lot of people know. Well, it's in her book, but I also did a bit of digging. So Amy Porterfield works for Tony Robbins, and Tony Robbins hires a online guru to learn how to launch his products online. So he already had products online. Like he already had products. He had, personal transformation, personal development products, but he hadn't learned how to master the online sale, right? So Tony Robbins goes to work with Jeff Walker, and he brings Amy along. And Amy's his assistant, capturing all the key insights from this conversation he's having with Jeff, that Tony Robbins is having with Jeff. So if you're not in the personal development world, Tony Robbins is huge in the personal development world. I have a lot of respect for him. Not my cup of tea, but I have a lot of respect for him. What he's built and what he's done, for the world, especially for children who come from families where they can't afford food. He's incredible in that sense. And I have a lot of respect for him. Huge respect for Jeff Walker. I've worked with him for several years, and just major respect for him as well. But Amy Porterfield, here she is, sitting in a room full of men, all men, talking about launching online, right? And so she's listening to them, and she's thinking, if they can do it, I can do it. And she went through this whole personal sort of turmoil of, what's Tony Robbins going to think if I leave Tony Robbins and I go set up on my own? And I love this. Her husband was like, Tony Robbins is not thinking about you. She was like, you're probably right. So Amy was grounded by her partner. So that's something I've got in common with Amy Porterfield. She's got a wonderful, wonderful husband who's super lovely and great father. And she's a stepmom to their son, but then also keeps her grounded. And I have a husband who is a great father to my children and who also keeps me grounded. So I have a lot in common with her. A couple of things I have in common with her is that I love personal development. She loves personal development. I have a dog. She has a dog. She had a dog before I did. Her dog, Scout. She's had him for a long time. I ended up getting Everest only about 9 months ago. She's a blonde golden retriever. So anyway, a lot of things in common there. But what I will tell you is I was doing it all wrong before I met Amy. So in January of 2019, the last amount of investment I had left, I invested in Digital Course Academy, and learned that I was doing it all wrong, and I had to restart all over again. Now, interestingly enough, if you're watching the video, you'll see on my wall, we've got a lot of stars on the wall. We've got a lot of sticky notes on the wall. I've actually been spending the last week or so, a couple hours each day, working with a member of our team who is one of our coaches for our brand new Business Beyond Social program. And she's developing the module for operations management. So how do you do operations within a business if you're a solopreneur or if you have a team, et cetera? What are the documents you need? What are the policies you need? How do you do your contracts for your employees, for your contractors, all that stuff? And anyway, we spent a couple days using Amy's system, the Post-it note system, the very first system I used to map out the module on operations management, the foundations of operations, which is going to be fundamental for our BBS students, which is our Business Beyond Social students. So this system I use all the time. Anytime I want to launch a new product, anytime I want to launch a new course, I use the system. So this system is very valuable. So what's amazing is when I signed up for DCA in January of 2019, so this is like going back a couple of years, and it was the last amount of money I had in the account. I did everything she said to the T. Like I literally was like, I'd listen to a module, I'd implement it. I'd listen to a module, I'd implement it. I'd listen to a module, I'd implement it. In fact, I planned everything, but I didn't realize there was even an implementation time in her course. And so I was all ready to do my webinar and I was waiting for the webinar, module to launch. And she's like, okay, now it's a break. And I was like, no, I got to do my webinar like next week. So when the webinar module opened, which is the module that teaches you how to sell in a 1 hour pitch, right? So a webinar is, you say, I'm going to talk about how you can leverage social media to return to work, change careers, or start a business. That was my webinar. And so then I talked about people who'd leverage social media to return to work. And I talked about people who'd leverage social media to change careers. And I talked about people who'd leverage social media to start a business. So I gave examples of different people who'd done that. And then I invited people into our, what was at the time called Social Media Magic program. But I had to learn it and implement it like that week because I didn't have, I was a week off. That's how much I was literally like, I'll do it. I'll listen to it. I'll apply it. I'll do it. I'll listen to it. I'll apply it. I'll do it. So I got my first digital course out there, the very first version of TechPixies out there. I did it within the 8 weeks that I was doing Digital Course Academy, which is just incredible because there's a lot now in Digital Course Academy. I went in there the other day. I was like, wow, this is it's like a master's degree in creating online courses. It's very organized, very structured. She does not leave anything out, no stone unturned. And anyway, in the very first launch with 500 pounds of ad spend, meaning I spent 500 pounds on ads to get people onto the webinar. Now, bearing in mind, I didn't know what I was doing. I was so bad at what I was doing. It cost me 20 pounds per person. So if you don't understand ads, the way that it works is you give money to Facebook, and then Facebook finds people that they think will be a good fit for you. And then if those people convert, you pay. So at Facebook, we gave Facebook 500 pounds. They gave us 20 people that converted. Now, 20 people converted. So I mean, I had 20 people that were coming to my webinar. And then of those 20 people that came to my webinar, I can't remember exactly how many people showed up on my first webinar, but I think it was like 10, about 50% showed up. It's like 10 people showed up, and then 6 people decided to sign up, which I think is actually really cool now. But at the time I wanted like 100 people, and I didn't understand what it was going to take to get 100 people even into the launch, let alone to buy. But I remember making back the money that I invested. I made it back in one launch. So Digital Course Academy was, when I went through it, it was like $1,500. I think now it's around $2,000. I put in $1,500, and then on my very first launch, I made $6,000. So I made it back fourfold. So it wasn't quite, maybe 6,000 pounds. So it was a bit more than $6,000. And that gave me the confidence to say, okay, I've got something that's working, right? You have to remember, I'd spent almost a year failing at everything I did. And I was under massive pressure because people had given me money. So not only was I failing, but I was failing with other people's money, which is much worse than failing with your own money, right? Because, you kind of like, I got to pay these people back somehow, some way, someday. So that first launch was amazing in the sense that I made back the money that I invested. And so then we started doing more launches and more launches and more launches. In total, since January 2019, I have launched 38 times. Now, the first 8 times that I launched using the Digital Course Academy method all the way. So I learned how to do webinars. I launched the product with a webinar, and then I built the product using DCA, which is the course. Then the next 30 launches out of the last 38 launches I did using Product Launch Formula. However, the sales page was Amy's sales page. The structure of the initial webinar, which I then turned into what we call the Sideways Sales Letter for PLF. Those of you who did Jeff Walker's Product Launch Formula, you'll know that basically he takes a webinar, and instead of doing it in one hit and then selling a product, you actually break it down over 4 sessions and then you sell something. So there's a method to the madness, right? So I've used both of those programs, but the sales page and the product that I developed with Digital Course Academy. So that's a real insight into how TechPixies works, because that's not changed. the foundations of what we do is still rooted in Digital Course Academy. It's still rooted in product launch formula. It's still rooted in these programs and systems that I invested in and I paid for, and I got multiple times back, right, from my initial investment. So the ups and downs of this are TechPixies started launching online. We had some very successful launches with DCA. We were making good progress. We then started to launch with Project Launch Formula, using Digital Course Academy as the basis for our sales page, for our sideways sales letter, and also for the product that we were selling. And then 2020 happens, right? So COVID hits, everything shuts down. No one can go anywhere. Everyone's locked down. A lot of people are on furlough. A lot of people can't work. And we did a launch that was planned. It was a planned launch, and it was called Social Media Supercharge, and it was in like April of 2020. So using all these systems, right? We've been using them for about a year and a bit. And we had 177 people sign up in one go. In one go, we had 177 people. It was incredible. And I remember being blown away by the number of people that signed up, the number of people that were excited about what we were doing. And of course, our business transformed overnight, because that was a lot of people we needed to serve. And I needed to build up a team that I didn't have. I had a very, very small team. And at that point, it was like we'd only served 100 people, and then suddenly we doubled in size. So I had to sort of build out the team, or I felt I had to build out the team. And actually, in some ways I did, because I didn't know what I was doing, and there was a lot to do with that many people. And I was just talking to someone, and we were talking about, well, what did I do to celebrate? Well, I had put in my fridge with a little sticker, I'd put a bottle of champagne that said 100 students on a single course. And I put that in my fridge, and I was like, I will celebrate with that when I get it. When we get 100 students. And we did. We got, I think it was around 177. And it was the biggest launch we'd ever done. And I even had raised prices, and there were all sorts of fears that I had overcome. I'd invested more in ads. And so if you think of my very first launch, I spent 500 pounds on ads. Well, when I did my launch in April of 2020, I spent about 10,000 pounds on ads, and we had about a 17-time return on that. So it was a huge return on investment as well. And that was really, really great. Now, of course, there's a million lessons I had to learn as a business owner, because instead of using that money in a way that I could have, I got nervous, and I felt like I didn't know how to do the next level. So I hired a whole bunch of people to do a lot of different things. I hired an ads manager who cost me an arm and a leg. I lost a lot of money on that person. Up until that point, I'd done the ads myself. So one of the bonuses of Amy's course was how to set up your ads. So I had done that, and I learned how to do the ads myself. I'd even gone and worked with the ads manager that had done the bonus and learned how to do even more. So I had learned how to do it myself. But then once we did really well, it was like, oh, I don't need to do this anymore. I can hire other people. And then I actually learned the hard way that that's not a great idea. Just going and hiring a bunch of people to do a bunch of work for you when you've actually done all the work to get there doesn't necessarily solve the problem, right? So I learned a lot. I made a lot of mistakes, and I had a really interesting 2020, 2021. We ended up growing really big. In 2 years, in 2020, we turned over 411,000 pounds. And in 2021, we turned over 565,000 pounds. So basically, in a 1-year period, we turned over 1 million pounds. Now, for someone who had a couple years previously only done 100,000 in revenue, that was a big shock to the system, and I wasn't ready for it. And anyone who's been around TechPixies for a long time knows that there's a saying that we have at TechPixies, and that is that you cannot outperform your self-image. I didn't know that principle at the time, but if your self-image if you haven't created a self-image that you believe in, that you are completely connected to, that you're a vibrational fit for, when you have a huge major success like I did, self-sabotage kicks in really heavy. And I self-sabotaged completely. And I can say this now because I've been on this journey for a long time, and I'm out the other side of it. But I now know what happened. I know that I was in a place where we had grown way beyond what I ever thought possible. And there was a part of me that wanted to do what we did 100%. But there was a part of me that wasn't ready to do what we did, if that makes sense. So I wanted to turn over £1,000,000. I wanted to change the lives of 1,000 people. I wanted to do all of that. But when it happened, I wasn't ready. And I made a whole lot of mistakes. And I got myself into a really big mess. And that mess was probably around October of 2021. We made a big investment at that point into Facebook ads, thinking that that was going to be the solution to the next level of things that we were doing. I didn't know how to do Facebook ads, and I was relying on other people to do Facebook ads, and we just kept pouring my money into Facebook ads, and I made a million mistakes. And anyway, what did happen at that point, we'd made all these mistakes, we just poured all this money in. We lost all our cash overnight. So basically what happened was I not only doubled down on the amount of money that I was spending on Facebook ads, but I also increased my prices. And I increased my prices too high. I got to a price point that people weren't willing to invest in. And so overnight, I killed my business. I completely killed my business. Now, none of this has to do with DCA. DCA was the one thing all the way through that always worked. It was me experimenting and trying and going bigger and doing bigger things and, not knowing what I was doing, not having the right guidance and advice. I didn't have people who knew what they were doing either. It was a bunch of people that just didn't know what they were doing. And so the thing that I want you to know is that DCA itself, building a course, launching a course, selling a course, that always worked. Where I made choices and mistakes as a business owner was when I had profits in the business, how I spent those profits and how I invested those profits and what I invested them in and what I didn't know. You don't know what you don't know, right? So in 2021, October 2021, I lose all my cash overnight. I remember it very vividly because I wasn't even in the country. I was away. I was in the US and I was doing a mastermind and I'd made these major changes. And then all of a sudden, everything the bottom went out underneath us. And I remember being absolutely devastated. And I remember thinking, what are we going to do? And I gave myself 6 months to try and turn things around, to change things, and to do everything I could to keep everybody's jobs. Because remember, we'd grown so much, $1 million turnover in 2 years. We were serving 13,000 women had gone through our boot camps. We had done so much that I had hired all these people. So one of the things that happened when we lost our cash was there was a real threat that I wasn't going to be able to pay people. And I had to start renegotiating salaries. I had to start renegotiating contracts. I had to start reducing contracts. And basically what I said was, if I can't turn things around by April of 22, I'm going to have to let people go. And that was really hard because I've done that before. This isn't the first time I had to do that. And again, this goes down to my really not understanding how to do that side of business, right? Really good at coaching, really good at courses. It took me a long time to figure out how to manage a business, and I'm still learning. I'm still there. So April 22, I have to let everybody go. And that was really hard. I'd done that before, because I didn't know what I was doing, and I grew my team before I had the revenue. I had to lay people off. This was way back in 2017, 2018, and then I had to do it again in 2022. 6 jobs were gone overnight. That was really hard. What I will say, though, is we never stopped launching. We never stopped putting the courses out there. We never stopped offering things because we knew the product we had was life-changing. I think that's one of the gifts that I received from learning how to do online courses is I learned that people could go through a course and change their life by doing that course. That was the gift. And so even though the company was failing, even though I had to let people go, even though, we had no cash, even though I didn't know how I was going to resolve it all, I still had a digital course. And I could still sell that digital course because I learned from the best. I learned from Amy Porterfield. I learned from Jeff Walker, and I knew how to do what I needed to do to sell the course. And also by that point, the course was very well established. With the number of students that had gone through our program at that point, we probably had 500, 600, maybe even 700 students. So we had really established ourselves, and we had our own roadmap of that worked, and we had our own stories of transformation, incredible stories of transformation. People like Carrie Gage, who launched a tutoring business online for students with math, children with math anxiety. Carrie got off of Universal Credit, bought her own house with her own money, using the tools that she got from TechPixies, the confidence she got from TechPixies, the learnings she got from TechPixies. That's one example. We've got hundreds of examples. If you go onto Google, you can read, there's between Google, Facebook, and our podcast, there's almost 500 five-star reviews. You can go and listen to people's stories. Our podcast has over 200 episodes. Most of those are success stories. I just did a success story with Cassie O'Hanlon, who is an English tutor, and she launched her online tutoring business off the back of TechPixies. She never would have done Digital Course Academy if she hadn't done TechPixies first. She now has the ability to build up income from an online course. So we've got incredible successes from people who've done our social media management certification program. So all the while that the business is failing, the students were thriving. And the business was failing because of choices I made, not because it was a bad business. It's a great business. It's a brilliant, wonderful business. It changes lives. So it purely from the fact that I've never run a business before until, a business at this level with employees and staff and everything else. There's just a lot of lessons to learn, and I've learned them all the hard way. So we lay people off in 2022. People leave and move on in 2022 in April. And in May of 2022, we get a life-saving 0% interest loan from SheEO, which is now called Corrales. And they gave us a lifeline because I had to pay severance packages, and I had to get the company back on track. At the same time, we got a grant from Unlimited, which is an amazing organization that has always supported us from day one. We've been supported by Unlimited in an unlimited number of ways. So they support social entrepreneurs. They gave us a grant for social sales using social media. And that allowed us to invest and diversify outside of just Facebook ads. So to set up a Google ads and YouTube ads, and also Pinterest ads. And they actually funded the Google Ads Manager and the Pinterest Ads Manager, and they funded the ads themselves. And that was incredible. And we also got the gift of an amazing student in TechPixies, Katie Robson, who had done TechPixies, had a personal transformation through TechPixies, decided she wanted to become an ads manager, went and trained with an ads manager that we'd used that we'd really liked, and then came back in and started to do our ads for us. So our social media ads now are done by a TechPixie who went through the TechPixie program. In fact, most of the people who work at TechPixies were TechPixies at some point. So Catherine Conway, who does our communications, she is a TechPixie. Lisa Mellis, who does all our design, she's a TechPixie. Almost all of our coaches came through our program. So Sophie Bradley, Pip Isles, Marianne Avery, they all came through TechPixies. Our life coach, Juliette Addenbrook, she came through TechPixies. So everyone who works for us has come through the TechPixies program, including our ads manager, which I just love because we all have this amazing philosophy that it's all going to work out, that we're gonna figure it out. We may not know how, but we know the how is known. And so we rebuilt the team, and we were able to sort of shut down the old chapter and start a new chapter. And that loan was a lifesaver. And it was gone as soon as it came in because we had all of these sort of outstanding expenses that needed to get sorted so that we could get ourselves back on track. And then I'm just going to take a big breath here because the gift that happened at that point, I could never have predicted. But I had, in the depth of all of that, I had done another online program. And it was really about transformational coaching, and it had transformed my life. And so for me, I wanted that program to come into our community, and that was the Dream Builder program. So I had gone to do another program called Dream Builder, which was really, I was in the depth of despair when my business was failing, and I needed something to tell me that I was going to get through it. And I was looking for something like that. And that's when I found Dream Builder. Dream Builder was amazing. It got me thinking that there's an answer to every question. There's a solution to every problem. And I loved it so much. I thought, I've got to bring that to my community. So we added on a new program. So we had the social media management certification, and we had the Dream Builder program. And those were the two programs that we started running. And really, things started to go in the right direction. And they were really starting to look up in terms of, we got back on track with all of our ads started working again. We had diversified our ads. We've gone into different things. But the one thing that never changed through the ups and the downs and the ins and the outs and the turmoil and all that stuff was, we had an amazing course. We had an amazing product that changed lives. That never changed. That was if you have the storm up above the sea and you go deep down into the sea underneath all the storms, you've got a deep calm. That was always true. And I would not have had that if I hadn't done Digital Course Academy, because Amy taught me exactly how to build a course that transforms lives. She taught me exactly the steps to make sure that my students succeeded. She taught me the principle that if my students succeed, I succeed, right? Because there's no point in, if my students don't succeed, I'm not going to be successful. So it's a two-way street here. So May to October was a real rebuilding phase for TechPixies. May of 2022 to October of 2022, real big rebuilding phase. But we made a massive amount of progress in terms of having two products that we were selling simultaneous back to back. And then we get to October 22. And when I look back on October 21, where everything fell apart, I lost everything. And then from October 21 to October 22, I started to adopt this belief that there was an answer to every question. There was a solution to every problem. And I might have been sitting in the depth of despair, in the worst place I could possibly be sitting in terms of, is this company going to survive? No joke. In December of 2021, the investors were having a conversation with me about whether or not we should wrap things up. Like, hey, Joy, maybe it's time to throw in the towel. There was no way. At that point, I had enough conviction that we could turn things around. I just didn't know how we could turn them around. So we kept going. And October 2022, I made some very big decisions for myself. One was that I was not going to take any more investment. I wasn't going to take any more loans. No loans, no investment from that point forward. That was a decision I made in October of 2022. And we had no funding whatsoever from June of 22 till now. We've had no funding at all. So really the last amount of funding we ever had was in May of 22. And we've been completely on our own from June of 22. And that journey has been incredible, because I didn't think I could do it. And this is the first time I'm really talking about it. Like, there's a few podcasts where I've sort of talked about it, but this is the first podcast where I'm laying it all out there. I'm telling you exactly what happened and how it happened and all the mistakes. And I'm also telling you that we almost shut our doors, or I was encouraged to. And I said no. I said, no, we can figure this out. And I got a strength that came in October of 22 that I have never had before. And that came off the back of spending a year doing the Dream Builder work and really helping others to start doing the Dream Builder work and seeing the fruit of that. So since October of 22 until now, which is, I'm filming this in September of 23. So a full year where I said no loans, no investment. We have been profitable. We just had 3 profitable months. May, June, and July were all profitable months. And one thing I did in when I'd cut all the costs that I could possibly cut, and we still couldn't cover our expenses. I decided in July of 2022 that I was going to cut my salary, because that was the only thing left that I could cut, that I could keep moving things forward. So in July of 2022, I stopped taking a salary. It was either my salary or it was the staff. I had to choose. So it was either let 3 people, amazing 3 people that have been working for me for years, let them go, or cut myself and see if I can save their jobs. So I decided to do that. Now, you're probably wondering, what did I do for money? Because I didn't have money coming in. Well, I went and got 3 jobs. So I was doing the TechPixie job, even though I wasn't making any money, but I went and I worked at my daughter's school as a rowing coach. And then I went and worked at her school as a receptionist. So I worked 20 hours a week at the secondary school reception, and 10 hours a week as a secondary school rowing coach. So 30 hours a week, I was working a very, a wonderful opportunity for me, but also a very low paid opportunity. It was a third of what I was making previously. But it was an opportunity to keep my business going because there were benefits to that. My daughter's school gave me a reduction in tuition, which was amazing and awesome because I had that opportunity to work at her school and keep her at her school, which that would have been one of the things that we would have struggled to do had I not had some extra income coming in some way. And I said I was going to do it for 12 months. I said, I will give up my salary for 1 year. If I can't turn it around in 1 year, then I'm going to have to rethink what I'm doing. And so May, June, July, all profitable, back to back. But also that time period from October of 22 to July of 23 has been profitable overall. That whole period, we might have had some ups and downs, but that whole period has been profitable. Since January 1st to July 31st, we have broken even, and we've got a small profit margin that I know is going to build as we continue to build our company. Why do I tell you all of this? I tell you this because I want you to know, number one, TechPixies isn't TechPixies because we got investment. I am very grateful for the investment. I learned a lot from the investment. In fact, it helped me to fail faster, fail more, fail faster. But I didn't need the investment to build what I've built now. I've been investment free, loan free, no loans, no investment since June of 2022. And we've been able to be self-sustaining. We've been able to turn over multiple 6 figures. We've been able to provide jobs for 3 employees and 9 contractors. We've had over 13,000 women go through our programs. We've had over 22,000 people join our online community, meaning our social media. We've got over 12,000 regular listeners to our podcast. In terms of our mailing list, we send that out every week and people listen to the podcast. We're about to reach 100,000 downloads of our podcast. We've just reached 200 episodes. Now, none of it, and I'm not joking for 1 second, would have been possible if I hadn't learned a proven system to creating an online course. If I hadn't had the courage and the conviction to start a podcast. Who told me to start a podcast? Amy Porterfield. Who taught me how to build an online course? Amy Porterfield. This business is still going and still thriving today on the same product that we built 8 years ago. Now it's been improved, it's been changed, it's been made better over and over and over again. What we have now is 100 times better than what we had 8 years ago. But the principle of the business, the base of the business, the core of the business, the foundation of the business, that is all Amy Porterfield. So I just want to say a huge shout out. And I wanted to just summarize what I've learned from Amy Porterfield. Having worked with her since 2019, having learned from her, having been guided by her, I still listen to her podcasts. I still engage with her social media content. I still pay attention to what she's doing. I still listen to her when she says, do this or do that. I listen to her and I do it. I've learned so much from her. And of all the different things I've done in business, raise investment, take loans, have different mentors, she was the first one. And she's the one that helped me get going in the right track. So I thought what I would do, now that I've given you my very long extended journey, and I probably need to learn to tell that story much, much more compactly. But I think it's really important that for those people who've been listening to this podcast for a long time, that you get to hear the raw part of business, right? We need to talk about this. Women need to talk about it. Women who run businesses need to talk about the real struggles that exist in those businesses. We don't need to camp there, right? As Mary Morrissey says, don't camp there. But we got to talk about it. And we got to talk about the real possible struggles that you can have. But I will tell you that the stalwart, the thing that never changed, was our ability to deliver a life-changing program. And that's why we're still in business, I believe, because we still have a product that works. We've always had a good product. We've always had a product that works. That product was built and designed off of a system that Amy Porterfield built and designed. And I just learned from her, applied it, and then launched it. So 5 things that I've learned from Amy Porterfield that have helped me over the last 4 years as I've built my business, even after it failed and I rebuilt it, these things have stayed true. So the first thing that Amy Porterfield told me was that in order to teach people how to do something, you only have to have 10% of an edge. You only have to have a 10% edge on someone else. And realistically, you probably have a much bigger edge than you think you have. But knowing that you only have to have a 10% edge is a real wonderful thing. That if I can just show you how to do something that you don't know how to do, but I know how to do, that I have given you a gift and you've received a gift. And one thing I knew how to do, I knew how to set up social media properly. I knew how to post on social media properly. I knew what was important with social media. I may not be the influencer that has, 1 million followers, but I do understand what's important with social media. And I do understand how to get you set up properly. And I do understand that actually getting someone started on social media is all they need to have the foundations to fly on social media, right? I don't need to teach you how to be an influencer. I just need to teach you how to do it properly and in a way that you're not scared of it, right? And that's what we do at TechPixies. Once you've got those foundations, you can fly. We have people in our community who have done amazing things on social media. They started with us. They got the basics, the fundamentals. That's what I did with Amy. I got the basics. I got the fundamentals. Here's how you launch a course properly online. So the first principle that Amy taught me was you only need to be 10% ahead of the other people to then be able to teach something. The second thing that Amy Porterfield taught me was if you want to get something done, it's got to go on your calendar. It's got to be scheduled onto your calendar. One of the very first things she said in her welcome module when she's doing the course is, I want you to put dedicated time on your calendar to do this course. Now, up until working with Amy, I did whatever happened on my day. It was like, oh, what are we going to do today? It was like, I'll respond to email and okay, someone wants to do a call, I'll do a call. I had no structure whatsoever to my time. Now, Amy had worked in corporate, so she had a really, really, really structured time frame, structured organization. She was really, really organized. I was the opposite of that. I was all over the shop. And she said, if you want to do this, you need to schedule time on your calendar and you need to commit to it. That was the first time that it's really in my adult life since I'd been at university that I had scheduled time to actually learn and implement something. So that was huge. So the second thing she taught me, the second principle she taught me was the power of the calendar. That if I want to get it, if it's not on the calendar, it's not going to get done. Get it on the calendar, it'll get done. That's a principle I hold true today. And I say to my students and my community that the number one transformational tool they have is their calendar. The number one transformational tool you have is your calendar. How do I restructure my calendar? How do I organize my calendar so I can move forwards? So that's the second principle that she taught me. The third principle she taught me is that podcasting is the way forwards. I did not know what podcasting was when I started working with Amy. At that point, all I knew about was blogging because I was a blogger. Before I set up TechPixies, I had a blog in Switzerland. Like, it was called Living in Lucerne, and it was all about living in Lucerne, all about living in Switzerland. So a big part of me did not know anything about podcasting. I didn't listen to podcasts. I didn't know what podcasting was. She swore by it. She said there's one way forward online right now, which is podcasting, and it's growing at a rapid rate, and you should get in on it. And I listened to her and I did it, and we're now over 200 episodes. In fact, our 100th episode, I got to interview Amy myself personally, which was super cool. And then she invited me on her podcast, and that was super cool. And we talked about what it was like to get to $1 million, because she's in American dollars, in course sales, right? That it was actually possible that we could do it. And I did it. And she showcased me on her podcast. That was a big dream of mine, to be on her podcast. And she came onto my podcast, and that was a big dream of mine. But I'd never be doing podcasting if it hadn't been for Amy. So the third principle, and it really wasn't necessarily podcasting. It was podcasting for Amy, but the principle itself was this: create content every week, rain or shine. And what she said, and actually what she taught me to do, was to do a live video every week, rain or shine. That's what she taught me. Now, I turned that live video into a podcast, right? Because I thought, well, if I can show up every week online doing a live video, I can just take the video and I can turn it into audio and run a podcast, which is basically what we did. And I have a whole guide. If you go to techpixies.com/podcast, you can get our guide. It walks you through step by step exactly how we launched our podcast. So the principle really was show up every single week online, rain or shine, and do a live video. And I have done that. I have done that for 4 years. I have done that. And for 200 plus episodes, I have done that. I've never missed a week. There's never been a single week where I've missed it. Even if I know I'm going out of town or I'm going to be away, I pre-record it and it's ready to go. But I pre-record it live. I'm doing this right now, pre-recorded live. It's going to come out next week on the podcast, right? So I show up every week, no matter what, live for my podcast. That's the third principle she taught me. And it's really tied into weekly content, which I happen to make a podcast. And the fourth thing that Amy taught me was that digital courses, for women in particular, are a way to become financially independent. I interviewed Cassie O'Hanlon on last week's podcast, and Cassie said this. She said, I can do a 1-hour tutoring slot and I can charge £40 an hour for 5 weeks and I'll make £200. It was a little bit more than that. I think it was £49, right? So she can make 200 and I got to do math really fast. 9 times 5 is 45. So she can do, in 5 weeks, she can tutor someone directly. She can make £245, right? Or in the same 5 weeks, she can run a digital course with 5 students and she can 5x her income, right? On a digital course. And the way she described it is she can make over £600 in the same time over those 5 weeks, doing 1 hour of tutoring a week for 5 weeks. That's what Cassie said on the last podcast. Cassie's a tech pixie. She did the TechPixies program. She got herself visible online. She got herself comfortable with Canva. She got herself comfortable with Zoom. She got herself comfortable with online learning. And then she went and did Digital Course Academy and launched a course for kids, especially boys, to learn how to write creatively. And she's been very successful at it. And it's been a way to generate income as a tutor that has an element of I can do more than one-on-one, right? Really incredible what she's done. So the fourth principle is that Amy taught me is that a digital course is a fantastic way to become financially independent as a woman. My salary at TechPixies was the closest thing that I had to a salary when I was in my 20s. And for those of you who are listening to this podcast and you can relate to this, if you had a great career in your 20s where you were making a really good salary and then you went and had kids and then you tried to go back in and work less and get that same salary so that you could be home for your family, or you could be around for your family, it's almost impossible. It's almost impossible. I learned that I would be more successful building my own business. I would have more financial independence, more financial security, building my own business than I would by going and working for someone else. Every time I worked for someone else, I was always worried about being made redundant. I was made redundant all the time. I was made redundant in one financial job. I was made redundant in different areas. I was never confident that I was going to get that next paycheck. I was never confident that my job would still be there. So several jobs I've done, I've been made redundant. I felt like I had more security building my own business, more security, more financial independence building my own business. Now, I didn't have a salary for a year, but that was so that I could get my business back on track, so that we could go to the next level, so that I could get a salary again. And I get to decide what my salary is. I get to decide what I get. I don't have to, it's not somebody else telling me you can have this or you can't have this, right? And I do it based on a percentage of the revenue of the company, because I do all the sales. I built the course. I do all that stuff. So I take a percentage of the revenue as my salary. Financial independence for women is possible. One of the ways to do it is digital courses. Women are fantastic teachers. They're fantastic empathizers. They want you to succeed, right? Amy wanted me to succeed. I want you to succeed, right? So it's a fantastic, fantastic opportunity for financial independence as a woman. So that's the fourth thing that she taught me. And the fifth thing that I learned from Amy Porterfield, and I admire her to this day, is that you can do it all scared. You can do it all scared. You can do it all not knowing how it's all going to work out, but pushing forwards is the gift. Being the pioneer is the gift. Not giving up on your dream is the gift. Amy has now when I did DCA, I think she'd been in business for 11 years and she turned over $7 million, right? So she'd been in business 11 years. She turned over $7 million back in 2019. That's where she was at. It's now 2023. She has turned over $80 million. And if you follow Amy Porterfield, or if you get in on her podcast and you listen to her, or you read her book, she wrote a fantastic book called 2 Weeks Notice. She's done it all scared. And she's done it all with imposter syndrome. And she's done it all feeling all the things. And she's built a mega successful business, an $80 million business. 4 years ago, it was a $7 million business. And she'd been in business for 11 years. And 4 years later, it's an $80 million business. And she's like totally built a business that has created incredible career pathways for, I think she's got at least 20 full-time people on her staff now. She doesn't work Fridays. She works Monday to Thursday. She's got obviously some amazing courses. She's got her Digital Course Academy. She's got a couple other courses, Systems at Scale. She's got List Builders Society. She did it all scared. She did it all with self-confidence issues, self-consciousness. She felt like, I'm too big to do this. She felt like she was, she wasn't slim enough to do it. She didn't look good enough on camera to do it. She went through all of that. And she did it scared. So the fifth principle that she taught me was, if you've got a dream and it's big enough to scare you, it's worth doing. So I have a huge, huge, huge place in my heart for Amy Porterfield. And I wanted to just spend 1 hour, and we're at the top of the hour now. I wanted to spend 1 hour to be really raw and open with you about my business, and really raw and open with you about the ups and downs, twists and turns, the great moments, the devastating moments, the moments that I realized I was going to keep going no matter what. But I want to say, I would not be here at all doing what I'm doing if it wasn't for Amy Porterfield. Digital Course Academy was the very first online course that I bought, that I applied to my business. It changed the trajectory of my life. And you know what? I'm reminded of something that Jane Fonda said recently. Jane Fonda's in her 80s. I listened to her on the Ellen DeGeneres show. She was talking to Ellen and she goes, I'm just getting started. She's in her 80s. She's just getting started. I'm in my 8th year of business and I feel like I'm just getting started. I feel like we're about to go on a crazy, awesome, amazing ride and I'm now ready for it. My perception of myself, my belief in the company, my belief in the team that we've developed and built, many of whom have been working with TechPixies. They're in their 5th or 6th year at TechPixies. We're ready. There's no self-sabotage here. We've done it all scared. And we followed in Amy's footsteps on that. And I can't wait to do a podcast in 4 years and tell you what the next 4 years are going to be like. I just broke down 2018 to 2023. And I will do this again in 4 or 5 years, God willing. I'll get to come back and tell you where we're at. But I can tell you I would not be anywhere if I hadn't done DCA. So on that note, what I'd like to say to you is 2 things. One, if you're not comfortable online and you don't like doing videos and the thought of doing an hour fly solo live video on your social media feed creeps you out and freaks you out, scares you, then you need to come do our Social Media Superhero Bootcamp. The Social Media Superhero Bootcamp starts on the 18th of September. And even if you're listening to this at some point in the future, there's always another bootcamp. We run them regularly. Go to techpixies.com/bootcamp. If, on the other hand, you are already comfortable with social media and you have started to build up a mailing list and you have a community of people and you want to take your business to the next level, you want to create a second income within your business, right? Maybe you're doing consulting, but you want to have an online course for people who can't pay your consulting rates. Or maybe you want to raise your consulting rates and have an online course that people can do that can't do the one-on-ones with you. Whatever you want to do. Maybe you want to teach people something. Maybe you've had a desire in your heart to teach people something for a very, very long time, but didn't know how to do it. And now you can teach people all over the world at any time zone. If you want to do that, then I would go to techpixies.com/DCA bootcamp. Amy is running a bootcamp to get you started. It's called Course Confident. It gives you an idea of whether or not you want to do this whole course creation thing. It's only $47. And it is a fantastic opportunity to test out the waters with courses. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking, man, that journey was crazy and I don't want anything to do with it, let me tell you, that journey was my individual journey. Not everyone had that crazy my individual journey, but I learned a lot from it. And I know the one thing to be true, and that is that the course and the structure of the course and the way we sold the course never changed. And the transformation that our students had from the course got better, if anything. That was never the problem. The problem with our company and the growth we had was my inability to recognize that I was good enough. That I had all the skills and all the talents to do what I was doing. I self-sabotaged it. And I know what that means because I do transformational work now. And I help people overcome self-sabotage. And I help people overcome imposter syndrome. And I help people overcome all of those things I had to overcome. You cannot outperform your self-image. But you can change it. So we want you to be working towards creating a self-image that's in alignment with who you want to be and believing it's possible for yourself. When you believe it's possible for you and you get in alignment with that vision of yourself, everything starts to come together. That I know to be true. And while I was in the messy middle, and still am to some degree sometimes, the messy middle never goes away if you're a dream builder. It just comes in different forms. The one thing that held true was my ability to build and launch and sell a digital course. I'm still in business today because of what Amy Porterfield taught me. So I would encourage you, wherever you're at, come hang out with TechPixies. Do our boot camp for social media if you're interested in just getting yourself over your fear of being on social media. If you're interested in getting yourself over the fear of creating regular weekly content. If you're interested in getting over the fear of building up a mailing list, building up a community, all that stuff, we will help you with that. And we'll even teach you how to create money doing that, right? As a social media manager, if you want to. If you're ready to launch an online course, go to techpixies.com/DCA bootcamp. If you want to take it to the next level, do the DCA bootcamp. It's 100% worth it. It's only $47. What have you got to lose? Regardless of what you do, I want you to come back and tell me how it worked out. So email me at support@techpixies.com. I want to know if you did the superhero bootcamp. I want to know if you did the Digital Course Academy bootcamp. I want to know if you launched a course. I want to know if you listened to this podcast and it had an impact on your life. It's been a long time since I came and did a really raw 1-hour breakdown of the ins and the outs, the ups and the downs. And I hope it was helpful for you. Have a great day. Thanks for listening.